Just as a show of hand, how many people here are nervous about writing the CFE? If you're nervous, let me know, okay? Feel free to, feel free to let me know through the chat box. I want to make this webinar a two-way street, okay? So anything that you put down as part of the comment box, I will definitely look at, and I will definitely follow along, and I would be happy to communicate with you back and forth. So yes, the first question here that I can already see, wow, great. This webinar is being recorded and will be automatically recorded and will be saved directly within your student profile, right within your dashboard. Same with all of our other webinars, okay? We use the exact same technology for all of our other webinars. It's the exact same thing, okay? So basically it gets saved and stored directly into your dashboard. Okay, for anyone who's saying that they're nervous here, this is just the beginning. I mean, we're still in March, right? We are so far away. At this point, we're sort of at that 6-month mark, okay? So all of you that are kind of listening on to this presentation, you have 6 months, right? Which is, again, why I wanted to pick this specific date for this webinar, okay? We are at that 6-month mark. So there are critical steps that I want you to do, okay? There's critical things that I want you to do. And for the first time as part of this process, I want you to very seriously start considering preparing for the CFE, okay? So, but at the same time, again, you are 6 months away, and I want to make this as fun as possible. I want to help answer as many questions as you have. And I would be happy to kind of start off by basically going through the questions methodically the way that I see them. And just there's already 2 questions before we get started. The first question is the CFE similar to PA1 and PA2? To me, this is a completely different exam. Okay, it's like comparing apples to oranges, and in my opinion, you might like apples, I might like oranges, but they're not directly comparable. So it's not that it's similar or different; it's just a completely different process, right? So PA1 and PA2 is handwritten. This is typed. So the entire strategy behind the exam is completely different, right? So throughout this presentation, I'll show you what the key differences are, and then you'll have a really good understanding of what you need to know, okay? And if you still have questions at the end of the presentation, feel free to let me know. And just kind of as another question here before we get started, some housekeeping stuff, you will be getting this slide deck, and you will be getting a recording of this webinar that will be available directly within your webinar, within your dashboard online. So once you log into your account, you'll be able to access the recording right away, okay? And you'll be able to kind of get all of the information that you need directly from your dashboard, okay? So with that in mind, we're about 5 minutes in, okay? This is 8:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 5:05 p.m. Pacific. For those of you that are just tuning in or even watching this replay, thank you so much for taking time out of your nights to come and spend a little bit of time with me to talk about a very important subject. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to jot it down directly into the live chat. I'm constantly monitoring the questions, and I will be answering them as I see fit. If they don't necessarily relate to the subject that we are dealing with, I will defer them essentially until the end of the presentation. But if it's something that directly relates to one of the slides that I have up, feel free to put down your questions, and I will definitely provide the opportunity to respond to them. Okay. I'm a very transparent person. Okay. I'm extremely transparent with the way that I operate. So as a CPA, one of the most important things is sort of, professionalism. And sometimes being a professional means telling the hard truth to people. And that's sort of my intent here. Okay. So my intent as part of this presentation is to show you what you need to know without any fluff. Okay. So why don't we get started? So I'm your session leader for today. Again, I'll just jump right into my background of why you should listen to me. I'm the course director at PrepFormula, but prior to this, I have been an independent contractor and a comprehensive marker for the UFE for CPA Canada. So I was one person out of many, I guess. Well, not really many, a few, I guess, that was chosen to mark the final exam. So now called the CFE, previously called the UFE. Okay, it's very difficult to be selected. It's a bit of a lottery, even if you have the right experience. And today I'm also a prep trainer, so I work with students on a one-to-one basis through PrepFormula. Also, I'm a CPA mentor within the province of Ontario, and now actually the CPA mentorship program has been rolled out Canada-wide just recently in the last quarter. So now I guess I'm a CPA mentor across Canada. So everything, if you have any questions that pertain to CPA PERT, to your practical experience, through possibly the experience verification route, which a lot of people are very confused about, at the end of the webinar, feel free to reach out to me, and I would be happy to assist. Okay, in the past, I've also been involved with York University and my old firm. I started my career at E&Y, and then I moved to the Auditor General, and I worked in audit for about 6.5 years before going into education. So why PrepFormula? We provide a supplementary training program for students going through CPA Prep and the CFE, and we pair students with CPA markers on a one-to-one basis. PrepFormula is also certified as a designated post-secondary educational institution by the Ministry of Employment and Social Development in Canada. We issue T22028 tax deductible receipts for all course fees paid, had an 89% pass rate in 2014, and in 2015 and 2016, PrepFormula has been the largest and most trusted CPA prep program in Canada based on site traffic. So with that in mind, again, I just like to jump right into the webinar, but before we do, I always like to start off with a quick disclaimer that the interpretations that I will be providing below are my own personal opinion, and all rights are reserved. And the information is provided for illustrative and educational purposes, but I am not your accountant, I'm not your lawyer, and none of the information provided is sort of like an assurance service, okay? Or a format of like assurance advice, okay? And also I wanted to say that PrepFormula is not affiliated or related to CPA Canada or any of the other bodies, and our activities have not been approved or endorsed in any way by these CPA bodies. So, introduction. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. Okay, we're about 9 minutes in. I'm done with the introductions. Let's actually get right into the, into all the meat. Okay, this is all the meat that we're going to talk about. So, here's what we'll cover today: Capstone 1 and 2 stuff. What's the bare minimum? What's the optimal amount? We're also going to cover some of the CFE overview. So, what are the 3 days? What do you need to know? Again, I don't want to tell you information that you already know. I want to tell you information that you should know, okay? And more, what are the strategic considerations while looking at certain parts of the exam? We'll also look at the CFE scoring guide. How do you earn marks? How do you maximize marks, which I think is really critical and really important. We'll look at maximizing marks and through formatting. We'll look at debriefing. We'll look at the top mistakes that CPA candidates make. And we will also, of course, consider a 2017 optimal study plan. And again, I want to remind you all that we are now at the 6-month mark. Okay, so this is officially the 6-month mark prior to, 6 months and I guess a week. But yeah, basically a 6-month mark before the CFE. So I have prepared a 2017 optimal study plan that I think should really help you here. And we'll also kind of talk about some of the coaching and some of PrepFormula's course features, and then have a quick Q&A period towards the end. Okay, is that fair? So why don't we kind of just jump right into it? I'm actually sorry, I'm just going to pause here for a second. If this is your first webinar with us, please kind of hear me out for a second. The way that the webinar system works, okay, at the bottom right corner, you will see the word auto. If you can't see the word auto, hover your mouse around the bottom right corner of the video screen. You will see the word auto. Click on auto and then click on 720. And that will provide you with much better sound and much better video quality throughout the entire presentation. Okay? So just kind of as, one last housekeeping item before we get started. Okay, so Capstone 1 and 2. All right. So what is Capstone 1? Many of you will be starting as part of Capstone 1, and a lot of people don't quite exactly understand what to do. So let me simplify it right down to you. Capstone 1 was implemented and borrowed from the CMA process, the legacy CMA process, and looks remarkably similar to something called the board report from the old CMA examination process. Now, it has been renamed to Capstone 1. There's also been several attempts of it. But the reason why I'm telling you that it's a legacy process is there is a very worked out methodology on how Capstone 1 is run. And because it comes from a legacy background, which is not technical in nature, the CMA has always had a very non-technical approach that focused a lot on case writing, on the big picture, on the enabling competencies. Capstone 1 is very much all about the enabling competencies, which is not a technical part of the process. Okay, now, just for the record, there is a lot of technical as part of Capstone 1, but that's not the primary part of this process. So what this really is essentially a group assignment. You start off with a workshop where you are assigned a group of randomly selected CPA candidates from all walks of life. No, you cannot pick your own groups. You have to be put into certain groups. And that's just like real life. You might start a new job, and as part of starting a new job, you're working on a new team, right? You're interacting with other people, and that's sort of what this is trying to mimic. There's really a few things for you to do. Sorry, it says 3, but I decided to add a 4th one here. It's because there's really 4, so I apologize for this. Where you're supposed to submit 3 group submissions on weeks 1, 4, and 7. Okay, the first submission is basically your overall kind of skeleton, discussion about, or like a planning document of what you'll be doing. Week 4 is your detailed quant. Week 7 is your overall presentation. So you submit this presentation, okay, based on your group of, say, 5 people, and then you present in front of a panel of currently practicing CPAs who will be judging you on how well you present and how well you answer questions. The entire process might seem scary for those of you that are uncomfortable about presentations, but, and in fact, they will even ask you to answer questions. But in my opinion, this process is actually very simple, okay? Because there's 5 people, you're all in it together, and this process is not designed to be a difficult portion of the process. So my suggestion for you, and I will talk about this a little bit later, is in addition to doing the Capstone 1 requirements, which you will likely divide and conquer amongst your group members, my suggestion is to go above and beyond and practice, say, another case once every 2 weeks. This will allow you to maintain your case writing skills. And a few key dates for you to know is May 13th is when the workshop begins, and the presentations will happen July 8th to July 13th. That is a lot of time. As you can see, you have basically 2 months to prepare 3 different submissions. So this is, again, which brings me to my point again, this is not designed to be a difficult process. This is not designed to be the hard part of the exam. You have 8 weeks to do this, right? It's not like writing the CFE, and it's not like doing an entire exam 3 days back to back to back. You have 8 weeks, okay? So not very challenging. Capstone 2. This is a mostly voluntary module that focuses specifically on preparing you for the writing process as part of the CFE. Again, you start off with a workshop, which introduces you to case writing, and then you are provided with 7 to 8 weeks of weekly assignments. In order for you to do this, you have to submit certain assignments, specifically that test you on case writing, and attend this workshop along with doing the mocks. And while doing all of this, my suggestion is for you to do additional information, okay, for you to practice additional cases above and beyond the Capstone 2 requirements. So Capstone 2 will set a bare minimum of what you're supposed to focus on. But it is not the maximum. Okay, so in my suggestion here, you should not essentially kind of treat yourself to only the bare minimum, and always go above and beyond to practice a few other cases. So let me be very specific for those of you that are wondering what I mean about, like, what does this mean, extra cases? Well, let me draw a quick parallel here for a second. The average CA candidate going through the legacy CA process, back when this was called the UFI, on average would do approximately 6 to 7 cases per week. Capstone 2 requires you to only do 2 cases per week. Okay, 2 versus 6 to 7. Do you see where the problem is? And because of the relative nature of this exam, the people that you are writing against, okay, some of them might be in CPA firms, and some of those CPA firms might be communicating to them that they should be doing 6 to 7 cases. So now this becomes sort of like a bit of game theory, where if the candidates that you are writing against are doing 6 to 7 cases a week and you're only doing 2, guess who wins? Do you see my point? So my point here is to point it out to you that you should do additional resources here. There is a quick question, and I will definitely answer it. I think it's really important. And the question is, does the panel judge you individually or as a group? It is a pass-fail as a group, okay? So basically, this is why, again, I don't think that this is necessarily a very difficult process. I think there is a component as part of being an individual, but the majority of the marks will be provided for you as a group as a whole. So let's get into the CFE itself. 3-day case-based exam. The CFE does not test provincial tax laws. Okay, so for example, no HST. Okay, so there's no such thing as HST on these exams. There is also no provincial tax rates that you are responsible for. Technically speaking, you can estimate where required, okay, if you choose to do so. However, just a quick clarification here. When I say no HST, you are still responsible for GST, which is technically the 5% rule that would apply to some sales payments. Okay, I don't want to get too technical, but make sure that you know that there's a distinction between GST and HST, right? GST federal, HST possibly provincial, depending on the province that you are operating within. Okay, this is also a pass-fail exam. You're not ever provided a score or a mark, and all 6 competency areas are tested. Okay. So this is your financial reporting, your strategy and governance, management accounting, audit and assurance, finance, and last but not least, tax. Candidates are also expected to use their laptops and to write within a software called Secure Exam. And Secure Exam essentially locks down your computer and allows you to only write in a specific kind of archaic version of Microsoft Word and Excel, which is significantly limited. I run an entire webinar on how to maximize the usage of the functions provided within Secure Exam, which is already available as part of the PrepFormula package. For those of you that have not seen this before, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's about 2 hours and walks through all the tips and tricks that you need to know as part of Secure Exam. Next, there's a CPA Canada handbook, right, which is your ASPE, your IFRS, your Canadian auditing standards, your not-for-profit standards are all provided to you in an electronic format. It's similar to Folio Views for those of you that have used that before. Basically, it's a searchable repository available to you right on the exam, directly within the question paper if you need it, along with the Federal Income Tax Act. You're also being provided with a cheat sheet of selected tax rates wherever required. So you won't have to memorize some of the more common ones. And really, there's 3 key days that you're supposed to know. Okay, day 1 will be an extension of the Capstone 1 case. So think of the exact same company that you have done as part of the group, okay, but maybe 5 or 10 years in the future. Okay, so it kind of builds off the materials that you've learned as part of Capstone 1. And by the way, this doesn't directly connect with Capstone 1. And it's really difficult for you to actually prepare for this because it's not like it's a direct extension. I mean, it could be any type of a permutation of that case. It could be 5 or 10 years in the future. It could be 5 or 10 years in the past. It could be just, something that they invent, basically, okay? So don't get the, don't get the idea that it has to be, say, 5 or 10 years, like in the future as part of this process, okay? My suggestion here is after the case has been released, you will also know that you will have access directly to some of our materials from some of the previous Capstone 1 attempts. If you would like those materials, if you are a PrepFormula student, feel free to reach out to your prep trainer, the person that you are working with, and they will make those case materials available for you just to see kind of the way that the information was interpreted for some of the previous cases, and we'd be happy to make that available. Okay, we do also run a few webinars on day one, and program-wide, we had a very high pass rate. Approximately 95% of people who took our webinar for day one passed the 2016 September CFE day one portion of it, okay? So day one is not meant to be a very challenging part of the exam, and focuses a lot on case writing skills. And like I mentioned, we do have a very strong webinar that captures exactly what you're supposed to do, okay? Exactly what you're supposed to do as part of the process, okay? So CFE, the day two portion is 5 hours in length. This is a large case, okay? All 5 hours is dedicated to one case, and your attention will be required to achieve depth in one of 4 roles. It just so happens that the roles are the exact same elective areas as part of, say, the CPA Prep, but it doesn't mean that you're supposed to pick the same role that you did before. It's really up to you, unless you're in public accounting or have the intent to go into public accounting, at which point you have to pick assurance as your role. Last but not least, day 3 is a 4-hour exam. Okay, this is all back-to-back, folks. So 4-hour exam comprised of 3 short cases or shorter cases, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes in length. They are not linked in any way. They are not connected in any way. And there's no one that stops you and tells you to move on. It's up to you to decide when you want to move on once you've completed talking about, say, one of the cases and you choose to move on to the next. In my opinion, after doing this for close to 6.5 years, okay, and after being in the National Marketing Center, in my opinion, the hardest day that I find is day 3. It is the most time constraint of the days, and in my opinion, there also has the greatest multitude of subjects for you to cover, and a few key dates for you to, cross out of your calendar to make sure that you don't book any vacation time accidentally, or book any specific, trip for these days. Make sure that you don't do anything between September 13th and 15th of 2017, because that's when the exam will be running. Feel free to although book a vacation, and definitely please do so on the 16th or 17th once you've written this exam, because I do promise that you won't necessarily be in a state of mind to do any work after writing a 3-day exam. Now, I am going to answer a few questions here that I'm seeing. I'm just going to take approximately 30 seconds to answer these, and feel free to let me know if there's any other questions, and I'll stop again, or feel free to let me know if you have a follow-up question once I've answered yours. So the first question is, will CPA consider to write the exam on paper instead of the computer? The answer is no. Unless you have a disability that does not allow you to use a computer, you cannot use paper, period. I have seen it in practice while I was at the Marketing Center. I saw one paper that was handwritten, and the only reason why this was allowed was because the person had a disability. So to answer your question very directly, the answer is no. Will we be able to use Secure Exam for writing PrepFormula practice cases? And the answer is I hope you do. Next question is, what if someone is sitting at the CFE directly? How will he or she be able to link back to the Capstone 1 case? So forehand, you're actually provided with the Capstone 1 case directly on the day one of the CFE. Okay, you're provided with the Capstone 1 case in an electronic format, and it is available to you during the CFE day one. Okay, now obviously it would be a different case, right? The extension is a different case, and the extension is not necessarily connected to the original Capstone 1 case. Next, if I want to choose to show depth in FR and assurance, how much of management accounting do I have to be prepared with? I mean, it's a choice of either, by the way, FR or management accounting. I will talk about this in a second, but the answer is you're provided with a choice. So it's not so much about how much management accounting. Management accounting would be then tested at a breadth level as part of level 4. Okay, I hope that helps. Next, the question is, sorry, if you can repeat, if you intend to go into public accounting, you can only pick assurance, or can you pick tax as well? From my understanding, the choice is strictly provided for assurance as part of public accounting, but you may want to check with your local CPA body to confirm. Next question is, so basically day 3 focus is all 6 competency areas, and the answer is yes. It is 100% all 6 competency areas, and you are not provided with a choice to isolate or move away from any of the competency areas, which is why I also find it the most difficult of days, right? Imagine that you all of a sudden see 6 competency areas. Definitely that's the hardest day on the exam. Next question is, how much time does practicing one case writing take? You mentioned we should do 6 to 7 practice cases a week. Is it possible during while you work full time? So I do apologize for some of the confusion here. The specific 6 to 7 cases a week that I had discussed was in, say, the last 2 or 3 weeks before the exam. What I recommend is in the previous, say, 3 weeks before the exam, so say late August until the CFE, my suggestion is for you to actually take your vacation time then, and then to take time fully off work, okay? And once you have time fully off work, that's when you would be doing the 6 to 7 cases a week. If you're still studying part-time, so for example, from now all the way up until, say, middle of August, there's no expectation for you to do 6 to 7 cases a week. Next, is it quiet enough when writing the CFE? Thousands of people typing. Marwa, thank you so much for this question. I find it's really good to bring earplugs. When I wrote my exams years ago, I brought earplugs. It is not quiet. In fact, it sounds like a swarm of keyboard noises, okay? It sounds like a buzz, okay? So everywhere around you, all you hear is this buzz, okay? Especially if you are sensitive to sounds. The sound can be quite horrifying. I don't mean to scare you. It's not like worrisome, basically. But my suggestion for you is go out and purchase foam earplugs that will cancel out some of the noise. And yes, the last question that I'll pick up here, because we have to move. The question is, does Secure Exam only work on PC? Is that correct? So no Macs. And the answer is yes. I'm a Mac enthusiast myself. However, you should know that Secure Exam and the CFE can only be written on a PC-based computer. So no Macs are allowed. Perfect. Okay, so why don't we move on here? I just want to explain the Capstone 1 CFE Day 1, Day 2, and Day 3 in a little bit more detail, and just to kind of walk you through what you need to know. The new focus, okay, of Capstone 1, especially the Day 1 portion of it, is these enabling competencies, which focuses really on problem solving, decision making, ethical behavior, and communication skills. And if you notice, these are not directly in line with the core technical subjects. I mean, I don't have financial reporting up there. I have ethical behavior. I don't have assurance up there. I have problem solving. So Day 1 is not a technical day. Day 1 is all about making and reinforcing a very important decision for your client that's not necessarily technical in nature. So to me, the most essential skill of what you're doing here is communicating and and providing the right guidance. It is not about providing a detailed, complex calculation. It's all about just coming to a decision and defending it. And by the way, day one is a separate part of the exam. So yes, you've heard me correctly. For those of you that are writing the CFE for the first time, think of day one, okay, the CFE day one, as a completely separate part of the exam. So in other words, if you fail CFE day one, but pass days 2 and 3, by the way, day 2 and 3 are connected, okay? So it's like kind of like writing 2 exams at the same time. Day 1 is a separate exam, and then days 2 and 3 are one separate exam, okay? If you fail one of them, you only have to repeat the portion that you failed. Day 2, so this is your comp case, but you think of this as a hugely complicated and technical case where you get to pick a specific role, and you must focus on your elective areas such as assurance, etc. You're provided with 30 or 40 pages of information, and it's really critical to only focus on your key area. So in other words, what you're doing is focusing on either financial reporting or management accounting plus your elective chosen area, which will be a separate portion of the exam. And like I mentioned, CFE day 3 is 3 shorter cases, 60 to 90 minutes in length, and the style is similar to elective module cases, but the only difference is, the only challenge is that you're tested on all 6 competency areas. And some of the cases might have a significant number of competency areas all on one case. So for example, you might see a CFE case that will focus on 4 different competency areas, and you move on into the next case, and it focuses on 4 other areas that are not related, okay, or maybe 2 of them might be related, but each case will sort of be its own thing. Okay, so how do you beat the CFE? Okay, how do you move on? How do you actually score points here? I know that there's a few questions that are piling up, but just please give me 2 seconds, and I'd be happy to answer some of your questions. Okay, let's talk about how do you beat the CFE? How do you score marks? So first of all, why should you listen to me here? Okay, well, as I mentioned during the beginning of this presentation, here are a few tips from a CPA Canada National Center marker. As you can see, I've even scanned a portion of my ID to show you that I was part of the National Center. And by the way, writing the CFE or UFE does not provide for experience as being a marker, okay? So make sure that, when you're reading stuff online, I often get people that say to me, well, I've heard some rumors from my friends who wrote last year that, well, this is what's happening. And my suggestion for you is try to ignore rumors or things that you read online. Remember that this is a relative exam, so people have the opportunity, okay, and the incentive to deceive you for you to score worse, okay? I have no incentive for you to score worse. In fact, I would be very happy if you all passed this, this exam. And by the way, I just wanted to kind of, also explain that the marking center hours are pretty grueling. Okay, so this photo was taken before working 14 hours a day for 15 nights straight. So later on in the presentation, I'll show you a couple of strategies that I think you should be using to make my life easy or easier as a marker. So what should you know? Well, there's a few challenges from a CPA marker's perspective. First of all, that the exams are not technical in nature completely. To me, this is a balance between the enabling competencies and the technical competencies, okay? A lot of people just strictly focus on the technical competencies and completely ignore the enabling, okay? There is an equal weighting, in my opinion. Next, they're case writing focused. Again, it's not about writing a perfect answer. It's about solving your client's problems, and a perfect answer sometimes is not about having a perfect calculation. It's about having a well-rounded response. Last but not least, all of the exams, and of course, including the CFE, are heavily standardized. The strongest candidates are those that apply strategy, not those that memorize every single subject. My first tip to you is these exams are designed in such a way that you will run out of time. I can't write a case myself personally after doing this for many, many years and have enough time to write everything that I want to write. So none of the cases here are designed in such a way that you can actually complete, doing everything that you need to do. Okay? So that's the first thing that I want to tell you. The second thing that I want to tell you is if you look at the CPA competency map, okay, the CPA competency map has something called the Knowledge Supplement Guide. So they provide all of the information. So CPA Canada provides you with an entire listing of all topics that you were technically responsible for. Okay, if you go through that list methodically, you will notice that there's 1,800 topics that are tested on the CFE. 1,800 is crazy. That's a lot of information. So this exam is not about memorizing 1,800 topics. It's about having a structured process and applying the right strategy to pass. The strongest candidates are not the ones that memorize standards. The strongest candidates are the ones that apply case writing skills. Okay? And those are the candidates that are consistently scoring the gold medal and or the honor roll. Does that make sense? Okay, I want to explain this. So many of you, when you were young, have probably played board games. I want to use the example of Monopoly. When you all, and maybe most of you have seen the game Monopoly. It's a board game. For those of you that that have not, I apologize. This example will not apply to you, but most of you have probably understood what I mean there. You can't play Monopoly well unless you know the rules. Same with any other board game. So this is the rule that you need to know. Okay, so here's essentially the CFE Pass Guide, and here's how you score marks. So there's really 4 levels on which you can score marks on. And I try to identify the areas that I think are easier to hit and then harder to hit. So let's kind of start by talking about level 4. Okay, I always like to kind of go backwards here because I find it makes more sense. So the way that this works is as part of level 4, you're supposed to look at the CPA competency areas that you are not picking for your depth role and that you're not picking for your elective role. So say things like strategy and governance, okay, or just governance, right? What you'll do as part of that is there's a minimum number of competent marks or C's, known as C's, that you have to score. So minimum number of really good marks to score across the number of opportunities that it's available. So for example, if there are 5 opportunities that relate to strategy and governance across the 2 days, across day 2 and 3, then this would be a minimum of 1 C to hit. Okay, I just invented one. It could be anything else. It's really based on the relative performance of other candidates. So in other words, okay, it is a minimum number. Similarly, for level 2 and 3, for the depth areas, there will be more opportunities for you to score well on financial reporting or management accounting. There might be, say, 8 or 10 different assessment opportunities throughout days 2 and 3 combined, okay, that might relate to financial reporting. Across those, say, 8 topics, there will be a minimum number of, kind of C's, okay, or good marks for you to score to pass. So if you score the minimum number, you meet levels 2, 3, and 4, okay? And that minimum number, by the way, is set based on relative performance. Okay, it's set based on the performance as other candidates on the exam. Does that make sense so far? Now, in my opinion, this is easier than level 1. Level 1 is the number one reason why people fail the exam. Level 1 basically looks at your overall average. They call this sufficiency. They use these really confusing words, Okay, and what it really means is your overall average performance across all of the different, requireds or assessment opportunities where your performance is being compared to the average on a one-by-one basis by looking at the different requireds. Does that make sense? Like basically, if I was to summarize all of the different opportunities for marks across the exam, and I score what is your average compared to that, well, the overall average would be level 1. So generally, you might be a little above average, you might be a little below average, okay? So the way to score on level 1, okay, would be to have a strong average. Now, the thing that you have to realize is levels 2, 3, and 4 allow you to miss some of the opportunities, right? Because what I said to you earlier is imagine there's 8 opportunities and I only score 4 in them. I meet, level 2. Got it? Now, the problem is if you miss assessment opportunities, you get a 0 in that area, which means you will fail level 1. What brings down an average? It's obviously getting a 0, okay? So just because you meet levels 2, 3, and 4 doesn't mean that you will pass. And most people consider, level 2, 3, and 4 to be the most difficult. In my opinion, that's a misunderstanding of how the process works, because level 1 is the hardest portion of the exam. And then there are several types of marks available to you, okay? So think of marks as kind of buckets of marks, okay? So I've kind of coined this term when I teach. I use the word bucket, okay? So think of it visually, basically, as a bucket of available marks that are kind of set all around. So you're doing a case, there might be 4 different buckets, and the buckets really are the different competency areas that might have marks, available marks for you to, score, okay? These are typically marks within one competency area, as I mentioned, so say financial reporting, and then there are multiple buckets on the exam. So for example, on a CFE Day 3 case, there could be several assessment opportunities, right? So say 3 to 7 AOs. And then on a CFE Day 2 case, there might be, say, 8 to 12 different ones. There could be more or less, by the way. This is not set in stone. And the way that marks are typically scored is I use an arbitrary example, basically, that any competent mark or any competent with distinction mark would score a much higher number of marks, but there would be a greater weighting provided to, say, something like a CFE Day 2 compared to CFE Day 3. Does that make sense? So all of the opportunities across Day 2 would have more weighting to it because you have more time. But the most difficult marks to score would be under CFE Day 3. Okay, case writing best practices. So I run an entire webinar on how to use Rodac. Okay, I've ran actually several of them with different cases that are available for you already to watch right now. I guess, you will never score a C without just knowing technical. So here's a system kind of that we created, that we use internally, that I think you should follow. So RODAC stands for reading the case once and not going back. I'm a big, I'm definitely pro reading the case once and never ever going back and skipping ahead. You will hear a lot of people from the legacy process that will say to you, oh, we'll skip ahead, look at your exhibits, do this, do that. None of this stuff works with the new CPA Prep process in the way that the CFE is now designed, because now it's very difficult and everything is very scrambled. So it would be impractical and unwise for you to go back and forth. It would just be a complete waste of your time. So my suggestion, okay, read it once, try not to go back. Also, organize all your thoughts using an outline. My suggestion is learn how to use a computer outline. This is something like setting up a basic skeleton of your case using information and themes provided within the case, where you're then filling in the blanks. Do not use paper. Paper is an outdated process, and I completely discourage the usage of it. Okay, paper outlines have been promoted for a very long period of time. But with the way that, people have evolved computers, I think that the current process is designed around a computer outline, and I think that's what you should be doing. So when you organize your ideas as you read the case, you're then supposed to organize them into the different competency areas. So while you're organizing this, sort each topic into different competency areas, and then create issues as subtopics. Once you create the issues, you rank them by importance, and then allocate the amount of time to each area. Then you apply a preferred format. I'll show you these in a second for the ones that I think you should know. Last but not least, you conclude by summarizing based on the enabling competency, which is typically your big picture, or what is known as pervasive qualities, or what is known as things that are just generally hinting at you throughout the entire case. You know what I mean? This is an example of an outline that captures the time, the assessment opportunity, the exact sentence from the actual case, and the subtopics, along with the role, along with the timeline, all of the information that you really need to know. Now, before I jump into the formatting here, I just want to see that what the questions are here. So let me just kind of quickly go through the questions, and then I will promise I will go back into the presentation. Okay. So the first question is, how many weeks should we take off to prepare for the CFE? Is a month enough? Yes, I think a month is perfect. 4 weeks is great. The next question is, can I use Capstone 1 case of 2016 and 2017? Only if you've attempted it before. So yes, but only if you've attempted it before. If this is your second attempt, then yes. But it has to be the September 2016 case, not the May. Next question is, but if we get more of management accounting topics to be tested on day 2, it really depends, because your level 2, right, which is your depth area as part of financial reporting or management accounting, is driven not by just day 2, it's by day 2 and day 3. And the exam will always have a pretty equal amount of allocation between financial reporting and management accounting. Okay. Next question here is, so just to clarify, if I fail day 1 and pass day 2, then I just need to write the day 1 portion and not the rest. And do I need to still pay the full price? And the answer is yes, correct. Your understanding is correct. And no, you will not pay the full price to rewrite. The next question here is, with the experience verification path, can you still write the assurance competency? Of course, yes. It's a choice. It's up to you which elective to choose. And in my opinion, I think a lot of people pick assurance in general, from what I see, because they don't want to close doors. So even if that's not necessarily where your career is taking you today, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, or you shouldn't at least attempt it. And then last but not least here, so passing levels 2 to 4 depends on the total number of marks scored, while level 1 depends on the total number of AOs, even if the score in all AOs was an RC. That's not quite what I said, Mary. So I specifically said that level 1 is based on the average, okay? So I had never mentioned the RC at all, right? And passing levels 2 and 4 depends on a minimum number, not the total marks. Does that make sense? So again, levels 2 to 4 is based on the minimum number of C's, and level 1 is based on the average mark across the different requirements or different AOs. Okay, so remember how I said that as part of RODAC, you're supposed to know the formats that markers find to be super friendly? Well, here are the major formats that I think you should know. And here are the areas that I think you should be able to apply. So I've provided you with an entire listing of the preferred formats. For any ethical considerations, you can check out ICR, which is introduction of the issue, the criteria, the recommendation, and I've even provided you with the examples. For audit planning memos, use RAMP, the risks covered, the approach, the materiality, the procedures. Okay, you can actually take a look at these later on, and you can apply them yourself. And this is something that we go into great detail in as part of the program and as part of the one-on-one session. So I just want to give you a quick overview of what you should be using. As part of writing a perfect procedure, think of RAP, okay? I don't endorse Kanye West, music here, but just it's a really good acronym for you to remember. The risk covered, the assertion, and the procedure that's both realistic and actionable. WIR, the weakness or the deficiency, the implication, the recommendation. RL puck, sorry for any Ottawa people in the room. The Rangers lose the puck. The report name, the level of assurance, the pros of each, the user impact, and the conclusion. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit here. Financial reporting, identification of issue, the analysis, the correct treatment, the recommendation, the impact, and the tie to other competency areas. The finance format, which is a comparison of all the different adjustments from a quantitative standpoint with 3 to 5 years worth of adjustments, covering all the significant adjustments, not all, using present value, and having a perfect conclusion. Next, from a qualitative perspective, you should always discuss the qualitative pros and cons with the context of user needs. And if you remember the enabling competencies again, explain the major adjustments, suggest which option works best using given users' needs, provide recommendations, and then provide an overall conclusion based on financial and non-financial factors. Same with management accounting. It's the exact same format. And for management accounting, there's another format called IGR that looks at performance measures, which is introduction of the issue, the goal or the action, and then a recommendation of a specific measure or say a KPI. Tax. Tax is best discussed using something called CCAR. The criteria, the case facts, the alternatives, the recommendation. Okay, governance, IIR, similar to a WIR, but more kind of looking at the governance concerns within an organization. I think that's a really, really, really good method. And that would be kind of some of the key points for you to apply. Okay, so in addition to, I guess, formatting things correctly and then allocating it into the different buckets, like allocating all the information across the exam, once you format things correctly, they will be marker friendly, and that's a lot of what we cover as part of the program. Okay, I just wanted to really show you that there are kind of methodical approaches to how you structure these cases. So another really important question for me is to kind of, to explain to people basically what is proper debriefing. I talk a lot about debriefing, and my advice to you is never to rush through your debrief. If you've ever had a chance to write a case so far, my suggestion is to do kind of the following 6 steps. The first step is reading the evaluation guide or see the answer guide. If you can, read a sample solution. If it's not, as part of our program, we can make other sample solutions from other students available to you if that's what you want to see. Mark your own question paper and see if you picked up on some of the issues or several issues or all the issues. Okay, review what you've missed. Okay, review important technical information. And my suggestion here is to actually go back into the handbook and review each and every single technical standard that's covered as part of this. And last but not least, rewrite portions of the response or maybe even the entire response, focusing on applying the correct preferred formats if you've missed information. Step number 6 is often ignored by many candidates. I would strongly recommend for you to take it very seriously. This is how you pass the CFE. Okay, folks. So a few other kind of minor little points that I just wanted to make here. One of the things that I just wanted to share here is some of the top 7 mistakes that I often see within the Marking Center. Just, they're not necessarily arranged in any format, but I do think that they are really relevant. And for anyone who's ever seen me talk about this before, please feel free to let me know if you have any questions about, seeing this now after maybe writing a few cases. So number one is kind of a lack of qualitative discussion within a quant. What I find is a lot of candidates spend all their time providing me with a perfect calculation, thinking that that's what's important. And usually about 50% of the marks, or even more, are allocated to the qualitative and not your calculation, even though it might not be provided to you. So a lot of people are kind of chasing that perfect number, even though that's not where the marks are. So be very, very careful. Number two, spending too much time working on or labeling Excel files. How many people here create beautiful Excels with colors, with underlining, with bolding, with, a perfect formatting, with perfect number formatting, and kind of the list goes on. If this sounds like you, okay, stop doing this, or at least for the CFE, forget about doing this, because I can't tell you the amount of times that I've seen a perfect quant in Excel, but then the person ends up failing because they've spent all their time trying to make sure that their question paper looks pretty. Okay, so if this sounds like you, if I'm talking to you right now, and if you're listening to me and you're saying, yes, I make my Excels look very pretty, be careful, okay? You've been warned. Next, lack of a proper outline or plan. So I already mentioned this before, right? How many people here have tried to write a case before? And how many people have kind of done the little scribbles? Okay, and this could be like, on the side margin, on the right, above the paragraph, below the paragraph, in between the paragraph, you'll kind of put like little scribbles of your own comments on the question paper. Well, that also is not a very good strategy, because by the end of this, you won't be able to read what you wrote. So my suggestion is to, again, during the next 6 months, practice the case writing approach and practice putting down all the information in a methodical way into a computer outline. And again, you have 6 months to perfect something. Lack of a proper plan, and these little margin notes really hurts people. Next, no focus on the big picture, right? So again, if you ignore the enabling competencies, which are often required for a C, and if you don't add value, again, if you strictly focus on some sort of a weird calculation that has no meaning, then you won't score well. And again, if you misapply the formatting, if you choose to somehow not focus on the formatting that I have taught or provided, or you might change the formatting to not really make sense, well, that's a problem too. The next two are kind of, I would say, are definitely a little bit more controversial, okay? So number 6 is copying and pasting handbook standards. So there's a really good way of doing this, and there's a really bad way of doing this. So if you just simply copy and paste the handbook standard and then leave it alone and don't explain yourself, that's bad, okay? What's even worse is that if you try to copy and paste in the handbook standard directly on the exam and then somehow blend it in to make it look like you're writing by spending all your time on formatting and not explaining why it's useful, that's a problem as well, okay? So always try to provide your own insight, your own value to why you arrived there, right? Answer the why question. Last but not least, no overall conclusion, right? Again, at the end of the case, you want to have a final conclusion explaining the big point as part of the case. The final conclusion will allow me, the marker, to be able to answer on whether I feel like you understood the case or not, whether you understood your role or not, or again, whether you were just stuck on one of the assessment opportunities. Okay, that's pretty simple, right? Pretty simple so far. So I'm going to just kind of finish off a few more slides, and I do promise I will answer your questions in a second. Okay. But what I just wanted to show you quickly is the study plan for the next 6 months. I think it's really critical, okay? So again, this is the 6-month warning that I need to provide you here. So as the largest CPA program in Canada, okay, we average about 30,000 site visits a month. Last year, we've worked with about 1,300 candidates. As the largest program in Canada, based on actual use, actual usage and the most people within our program that are actually using our contexts. This is what I think you should be doing, okay? Now, many of you might not necessarily agree with me, or many of you might be stuck in jobs where you are very, very busy, or might have some sort of a personal reason why you can't start immediately, okay? If you can start immediately, this is what you should be doing. If you follow all 6 steps here, you have a very, very high chance of passing, okay? I will make it as easy as possible for you. Literally, I'll spell out what you need to do. And here it is, this slide alone. So starting now until May 12th, my suggestion is to watch our weekly webinars. We do 2 webinars a week. They are free to students, okay? Plus all the webinars going back to January 12th. Also free to students, okay? They are free. Otherwise, they cost $55 per webinar. If you're registered in any of our CFE courses, both CFE Prep and CFE Prep Plus, twice a week there is a webinar. Please watch it. Okay, we cover technical contents. We cover basic case writing. Before starting in Capstone 1, I want you to have at least a basic understanding of technical and case writing, because as soon as you hit Capstone 1, which is May 13th, the expectation is super high. The expectation at that point is for you to do an incredible job as part of technical and case writing. So at that point, you need to be ready. So which brings me to number 2. As part of Capstone 1, as I mentioned, you're supposed to do the Capstone 1 requirements, and you're supposed to do 1 extra short case every 2 weeks. That's my optimal plan there. Next, so in the middle of Capstone 1 and Capstone 2, we will have a 5-day intensive webinar session, okay, from July 14th to July 18th, where we'll have online webinars, which will be recorded and available until the 2017 CFE. That will focus on everything you need to know for the CFE. So this will be like a final intensive session for 5 days, covering everything you need to know. Again, included as part of the CFE package. Then you get into Capstone 2, July 22nd. Okay, there is about a 3-day break there. July 22nd, you're in there. Okay, until September 12th, which is a day before the until September 12th, which is the day before the CFE, you're supposed to do the Capstone 1 assignments. Remember the 2 cases plus additional PrepFormula cases. And at that time, you should do the majority of your one-on-one coaching sessions and marking all the way up until the CFE. Okay, so we'll assign you a CPA marker immediately as soon as you join. And if you join now and to follow along with step 1, then you will start off the one-on-one sessions now, and then maybe most of them will be carried over until the Capstone 2 stage, okay? Once you identify your strategic weaknesses, then we'll be able to help out. And we usually look for 3 key weaknesses: technical, strategy, and writing skills. Last but not least, okay, make sure that you are doing additional cases as part of Capstone 2, right? I would be happy to provide you more and more and more cases wherever required. Okay, so again, why PrepFormula? We provide the ability to help you pass one-on-one by working with a CPA marker. This is someone who is a CPA with professional marketing experience, who will be available for you for one-on-one learning along with our webinars, all the way from now until the 2017 September CFE. And we do provide full learning materials from now all the way up until through Capstone 2 to the CFE, practice cases to mimic the exam, T2202A, covering the majority of the program fees. And please visit PrepFormula.com for more information. And I do want to say, for anyone who's currently in the webinar, as I mentioned, so as part of the package, you do get our weekly webinar starting from now until the 2017 CFE. You'll also have a dedicated mentor who's a recent CPA marker or facilitator. You'll have one-on-one coaching sessions, mark cases, a personalized schedule, a case database, notes, and along with our pass guarantee, which provides ongoing access to all of our materials until you pass. Okay, we've been threatening this for a while, but because of the nature of our webinars, we do have to increase our prices since we made the webinars free of charge as part of the program. So March 15th will be the deadline, and we will unfortunately have to increase our prices. Okay, so the price for currently for CFE Prep is $797 or 3 payments of $265 a month, and CFE Prep Plus is $1197 or 3 payments of $399 per month. Okay, it includes all of what I just mentioned. So now is sort of the question and answer period. Okay, so let me go through your questions. The first thing that I'll say is thank you so much for attending this specific webinar. This was a really good reminder, I think, that again, we are 6 months out. I do hope to see you all at the next webinar. Okay, I think the next webinar that we have is planned for Saturday. Okay, it's at 1 o'clock. It's at a convenient time. It's on a weekend. Okay, I apologize that it's on a weekend, but we do get a lot of requests from people saying, please do webinars on weekends so I can attend. So all of the webinars provide immediate replays. Okay, you do have access to this. If you want to request a note package, please email education@prepformula.com for this slide deck. If you want to get the slide deck, let me know. If you want me to take a look at your specific case or to provide you with advice on anything that you are doing, please email me direct. This is my email. This is my phone number. And please feel free to let me know if there's anything that I could be of assistance with.